The first reports came through the quantum relay at 0347 hours, Terran Standard Time. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the holographic displays flicker with incoming data streams. Each symbol represented a human colony, and one by one, they were going dark. "Ma'am, we're losing contact with Kepler Station," reported Lieutenant Morrison, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Last transmission shows massive energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment." Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the tactical display. The cold metal bit into her palms, but she welcomed the pain. It kept her focused while her world collapsed around her. "What about New Geneva?" "Gone, Admiral. Energy readings suggest complete surface sterilization." The next few minutes brought a cascade of horror. Proxima Sanctuary, Haven Colony, New Kyoto, Eden's Rest. Every human settlement beyond the Sol system was being systematically destroyed. The enemy wasn't just attacking. They were erasing humanity's footprint from the galaxy with ruthless efficiency. "Who's doing this?" Sarah demanded, though part of her already suspected the answer. "Sensor analysis confirms Zephyrian Empire signatures, ma'am. Their entire Third Fleet appears to be conducting synchronized strikes across all our outer territories." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 7 million human lives pressing down on her shoulders. 7 million men, women, and children who had left Earth to build new homes among the stars. 7 million souls reduced to radioactive ash by an enemy that had pretended to be their friend. The Zephyrians had been humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. They'd arrived 50 years ago with gifts of technology and promises of galactic brotherhood. Their sleek ships and elegant blue-skinned diplomats had offered humanity membership in their vast interstellar empire. All they asked in return was that humans remain peaceful, trading partners rather than competitors. Humanity had eagerly agreed. Earth's governments had signed treaties limiting human military expansion, promising to focus on commerce and agriculture rather than warfare. The colonies had been established as trading posts and farming settlements, peaceful outposts designed to prove humanity's commitment to galactic harmony. It had all been a lie. "Admiral," Morrison said quietly, "incoming priority transmission from Zephyrian Command." The holographic display shimmered, resolving into the image of Supreme Commander Veltar, his crystalline blue features arranged in what humans had learned to recognize as contempt. His 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he began to speak. "Primitive humans of Earth." Veltar's translated voice carried the musical tones that had once seemed so beautiful to human ears. "Your pathetic expansion into our territory has been terminated. Your colonies burn as a reminder of your place in this galaxy. You will remain confined to your single world, serving the Empire as the docile slaves you were always meant to be. Any attempt at retaliation will result in Earth's complete destruction." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah stared at the empty space where the alien's image had been, feeling something cold and terrible crystallizing in her chest. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders, their faces pale with shock and grief. They had no idea what was coming next. Sarah walked slowly to her command chair, each step deliberate and measured. Her fingers found the small silver key hanging around her neck, a key she'd hoped never to use. She inserted it into a hidden panel beside her chair, and the tactical display suddenly exploded with new information. Hidden military installations throughout the Sol system came online. Defense platforms that had masqueraded as research stations revealed their true nature. The asteroid mining operation in the belt dropped its camouflage, exposing a massive weapons manufacturing facility. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers and scientific vessels began broadcasting their authentic military signatures. "Dear God," whispered Morrison, staring at the display. "How long have we been preparing for this?" "Since the day they first arrived," Sarah said quietly. "We learned early never to trust species that demanded we remain weak." She touched another control, and a new section of the display activated. "Morrison, send a message to all hidden installations. Authorization code, Omega Protocol 77. Tell them the masquerade is over." The lieutenant's hands moved across his console with growing excitement. "Ma'am, I'm reading massive power signatures throughout the system. How do we hide all of this?" Sarah's smile was cold as winter on Pluto. "The same way we hid our true nature for 50 years. We let them see exactly what they expected to see. Peaceful farmers and merchants who couldn't hurt a fly." Her voice hardened to steel. "They killed 7 million of our people because they thought we were helpless. Now they're going to learn why humanity has been the apex predator on every world we've ever inhabited." The massive display wall ahead of them flickered, showing the real strength of Earth's military. Thousands of ships began moving through space, their stealth systems disengaging after decades of careful concealment. Weapons platforms that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy powered up for the first time since their construction. "Send a message to the Zephyrian Third Fleet," Sarah commanded, her voice carrying across the suddenly buzzing command center. "Tell them that Earth remembers every single human life they took today. Tell them that they made one critical mistake in their calculations." "What mistake, Admiral?" asked Morrison. Sarah's eyes reflected the glow of the tactical displays as Earth's hidden fury began to reveal itself. They assumed that a species capable of love was incapable of hate. The Zephyrian Third Fleet hung in space above the smoking remains of New Geneva, their sleek vessels gleaming with satisfaction. Supreme Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the last traces of human civilization burn on the planet below. His 6 eyes tracked the thermal blooms where cities had once stood, and he felt the deep pleasure that came from a successful extermination. "Commander," his tactical officer announced, "we're receiving an unusual transmission from the Sol system." Veltar's head turned with serpentine grace. "From Earth? How amusing. I suppose they wish to beg for mercy." The message began to play, but instead of the expected pleading, a human female's voice spoke with deadly calm. "Zephyrian Third Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender unconditionally and submit to judgment for crimes against humanity. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent except for the soft harmonics of Zephyrian laughter. Veltar's crystalline features arranged themselves into an expression of pure contempt. "Terran Defense Force? What fantasy is this? They have no military beyond their pathetic colony guard units." His science officer's voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the Sol system. The patterns don't match our intelligence reports." "Impossible," Veltar dismissed. "We've monitored that system for 50 cycles. They have nothing but cargo vessels and research stations." He gestured imperiously. "Prepare the fleet for translation to Earth. We'll finish this charade by reducing their homeworld to cosmic dust." But as the Zephyrian ships began their jump sequence, space around them started to shimmer. The distortions began small, like heat waves in empty vacuum, then grew into massive tears in reality itself. Through these dimensional rifts came ships unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. The first vessel to emerge was a monster of black metal and angry red lights, twice the size of Veltar's flagship. Its hull bristled with weapon arrays that the Zephyrians had never seen before. More ships followed, sleek predators that moved through space with the fluid grace of hunting sharks. "Commander," the tactical officer's voice cracked with panic, "we're reading massive energy signatures. These vessels, they're not in our recognition files." Veltar stared at the growing human fleet in disbelief. "Where did they come from? Our intelligence showed no military construction." "Perhaps," came a new voice over the communications array, "your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see." The transmission showed Admiral Chen standing on what was clearly a massive warship's bridge. Behind her, holographic displays showed the true scope of Earth's military might. Thousands of vessels emerging from hidden bases throughout the Sol system. "For 50 years, Chen continued, we've played the role you expected. Peaceful farmers and merchants, grateful for your protection and guidance. We built our colonies as you demanded, keeping them lightly defended and focused on trade. We signed your treaties, limiting our military expansion." The tactical display behind her shifted, showing the massive construction projects that had been hidden from Zephyrian sensors. asteroid bases that had masqueraded as mining operations, research stations that were actually weapons laboratories. The scope of human deception was staggering. But you made one fundamental error in your assessment of our species, Chen said, her voice growing colder. You mistook our patience for weakness. You confused our restraint with inability. You thought that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war. Veltar found his voice, though it trembled with rage and growing fear. Impossible. Our monitoring systems would have detected such construction. Chen smiled, and the expression was terrifying in its calm fury. Your monitoring systems saw exactly what our stealth technology wanted them to see. Every cargo hauler that visited your worlds carried advanced sensors, mapping your defenses and fleet positions. Every diplomatic meeting gave us deeper access to your military networks. Every treaty you made us sign showed us exactly what capabilities you feared most. The truth hit Veltar like a physical blow. 50 years of human contact, 50 years of what he'd thought was successful subjugation, had actually been preparation for this moment. The humans hadn't been building an empire. They'd been building the perfect trap. You killed 7 million of our people today, Chen continued, her words cutting through space like daggers. 7 million human beings who trusted in galactic civilization, who believed that peace was possible between species. You murdered them to send us a message about our place in your empire. The human fleet was now fully deployed, forming a perfect sphere around the trapped Zephyrian vessels. Each ship bristled with weapons that made Zephyrian military technology look primitive by comparison. Now let me send you a message about humanity's place in this galaxy, Chen said. We are not your subjects. We are not your trading partners. We are the species that turned a lifeless rock into a garden world, that conquered our own planet's deadliest predators, that built civilization from mud and blood and will. Veltar watched in horror as targeting systems locked onto every ship in his fleet simultaneously. The humans had superior numbers, superior technology, and something else that made his alien blood run cold. They had the patience to plan this moment for half a century. Surrender now, Chen commanded, and face justice for your crimes. Refuse, and discover why Earth never needed protection from the galaxy. The communication ended, leaving the Zephyrian Third Fleet trapped in the dark of space, surrounded by humanity's hidden fury, finally unleashed. Supreme Commander Veltar's hands trembled as he gripped his command console, watching the impossible sight of humanity's true military might surrounding his fleet. The elegant crystalline beings, who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, were discovering what it meant to be prey. All ships, full power to shields and weapons. Veltar commanded, his musical voice cracking with desperation. Prepare for immediate combat maneuvers. But before his fleet could respond, something extraordinary happened. The human ships didn't attack. Instead, they began broadcasting on all frequencies, not just to the Zephyrians, but across the entire galaxy. Every world, every station, every vessel in known space suddenly received the same transmission. Admiral Chen's face appeared on countless screens throughout the galaxy, her expression carved from ice and determination. Citizens of the galaxy, she began. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Today, the Zephyrian Empire murdered 7 million innocent humans in unprovoked attacks on our colonies. But before we respond to this atrocity, we want every species in the galaxy to witness what really happened here. The transmission shifted to show recordings from the colony attacks. The orbital bombardments played out in horrifying detail, civilian evacuation shuttles being deliberately targeted, children's hospitals reduced to vapor, entire cities erased in seconds. The audio carried the final messages of colonists calling out for loved ones as the fire fell from the sky. On Veltar's bridge, his crew watched in growing unease as their glorious victory was exposed to the galaxy as mass murder. These weren't military targets. They were families, farmers, teachers, and doctors who had never raised a weapon against anyone. Commander, his communications officer whispered, we're receiving priority transmissions from the homeworld. Supreme Chancellor Kethera is demanding an explanation. Veltar ignored him, focused on Chen's continuing broadcast. The human admiral was now showing the galaxy something else, detailed records of every interaction between humans and Zephyrians over the past 50 years. The Empire has told the galaxy that humanity is a primitive species that requires guidance and control, Chen said. They've presented themselves as benevolent shepherds, protecting the galaxy from human aggression. But the truth is different. The records showed Zephyrian demands that humans remain militarily weak, their insistence on limiting human expansion, their careful monitoring of every human vessel and installation. It painted a picture not of protection, but of systematic oppression designed to keep humanity helpless. For 50 years, Chen continued, we've endured this subjugation because we believed peace was possible. We accepted restrictions on our sovereignty because we hoped to prove that different species could coexist without conflict. Every treaty we signed, every limitation we accepted, was our attempt to show good faith. More records played, showing human diplomatic efforts, trade agreements that heavily favored Zephyrian interests, and human colonies that had sent tribute to the Empire while receiving nothing in return except the promise they wouldn't be destroyed. Today, the Empire decided that even our compliance wasn't enough, Chen said, her voice hardening. They decided to demonstrate their power by murdering millions of innocent people. They wanted to send a message that humans exist only at Zephyrian sufferance. Throughout the galaxy, other species were watching with growing unease. The Andromedan Collective, the Spiral Federation, the Void Traders, all were seeing the same evidence that humanity was presenting. Many were beginning to recognize their own experiences in the pattern of Zephyrian protection. On his bridge, Veltar was receiving increasingly frantic communications from Zephyrian High Command. Other subject species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their own relationships with the Empire. The carefully maintained image of benevolent overlords was cracking. The Empire believes that mercy is weakness, Chen continued. They think that because we chose restraint, we're incapable of strength. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The broadcast shifted to show humanity's hidden military installations coming online throughout the Sol system. Massive defense platforms that had been disguised for decades revealed their true nature. Shipyards that had supposedly been manufacturing cargo vessels unveiled the warships they'd actually been building. Humanity has never been the peaceful farming species the Empire claimed we were, Chen said. We're the descendants of predators who climbed to the top of our world's food chain through intelligence, cooperation, and the will to survive. We've been preparing for this day since the moment the Empire first demanded our submission. Veltar watched in horror as the tactical display showed the true scope of human preparation. They hadn't just built a military. They'd built the perfect counter to Zephyrian tactics. Every weakness in Zephyrian technology had been identified and exploited. Every tactical doctrine had been studied and neutralized. Supreme Commander Veltar, Chen addressed him directly. You have 30 minutes to order your fleet to stand down and prepare for surrender. Your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions of war. You will be held accountable for the murders you committed today. Veltar's pride finally overcame his growing fear. Never. The Empire will not bow to primitive apes. All ships, attack Pattern Omega. Destroy these human pretenders. The Imperial Palace on Zephyr Prime had stood for 10,000 years, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars like frozen music. Supreme Chancellor Kethera moved through its corridors with growing urgency. Her 6 eyes focused on the holographic displays that showed the impossible. Humanity's broadcast was being received throughout the Empire, and subject species were beginning to revolt. Chancellor, her aide whispered, struggling to keep pace. The Andromedan Collective has formally withdrawn from the protection treaties. The Spiral Federation is mobilizing their defense fleets. Even the Void Traders are refusing tribute shipments. Kethera's crystalline features darkened with rage. In one day, 50 years of careful Imperial control was unraveling because of these primitive humans. Where is Admiral Zektatha's first fleet? En route to the Sol system, Chancellor. But the aide hesitated. Our deep space monitors show something unprecedented. The humans aren't just defending, they're advancing. The truth was spreading across the galaxy faster than Zephyrian forces could respond. Humanity's ships, no longer hiding behind false identities, were emerging from every corner of known space. What the Empire had thought were isolated pockets of human settlements were actually nodes in a vast military network that spanned dozens of star systems. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the war room deep beneath Luna Base, surrounded by tactical displays showing the Empire's growing panic. Her staff worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "our deep reconnaissance units have confirmed Empire fleet movements. They're pulling ships from border systems to mass against us." "Good," Chen replied. "Let them concentrate their forces. It makes what comes next much easier." She touched a control, and new sections of the tactical display activated. Signal Phase 2. All sleeper units are authorized to begin operations. Across the galaxy, the Empire's worst nightmare began to unfold. Human cargo vessels that had been traveling Imperial trade routes for decades suddenly revealed their true nature. Each ship was a perfectly camouflaged weapons platform, carrying enough firepower to level a space station. They had been positioning themselves for 50 years, waiting for this moment. The Zephyrian naval base at Kepler Junction was the first to fall. What had appeared to be routine maintenance work by human contractors became a coordinated assault from within. The base's shields failed simultaneously as human demolition teams activated charges they'd been placing for years. The Empire's primary fleet assembly point became an expanding cloud of debris in less than 10 minutes. "Impossible," Kythera breathed, watching the tactical reports flooding in. "How did they infiltrate so deeply?" Her intelligence chief, a nervous being whose tentacles twitched with anxiety, provided the horrifying answer. "Chancellor, our analysis suggests they never infiltrated us. They were planning this from the beginning. Every human we allowed into Imperial space, every trade agreement we signed, every colony we permitted, it was all preparation for this moment." The revelation struck the Imperial leadership like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been gradually building toward rebellion. They'd been executing a 50-year military operation designed to position them for total victory. Every apparent act of submission had actually been strategic positioning. Meanwhile, Chen was addressing her fleet commanders via quantum link. The faces on her screens represented the finest military minds humanity had produced, officers who had trained their entire lives for this day while maintaining perfect cover identities as merchants, farmers, and researchers. The Empire built their power on the assumption that other species would remain fragmented and afraid. Chen said, "They've ruled through intimidation and the threat of overwhelming force. But they made one critical error. They assumed we would fight them the way they fight each other." Admiral Reyes, commanding the hidden fleet at Wolf 359, spoke first. "Our forces are in position throughout the Empire's core systems. Their military infrastructure is more vulnerable than they realize." "Because they never expected coordinated resistance," added Admiral Park from a Centauri battle group. "They've spent centuries suppressing individual species, not fighting a unified opposition." Chen nodded grimly. "Today we show them the difference. The Empire has grown complacent, ruling through fear rather than earning loyalty. Their subject species will join us once they see the Empire can be defeated." The truth of her words was already manifesting across known space. The Andromedan Collective wasn't just withdrawing from Imperial treaties, they were actively joining human forces in attacking Zephyrian installations. The Void Traders were using their intimate knowledge of Imperial logistics to cripple supply lines. Even species that had been enslaved for millennia were rising up, inspired by humanity's example. On Zephyr Prime, panic was setting in among the Imperial elite. Emergency sessions of the High Council devolved into chaos as reports of defeats poured in from across their territory. The empire that had seemed unshakable that morning was crumbling before their eyes. "We need to negotiate," urged Chancellor Kythera's military advisor. "Perhaps if we offer reparations for the colony attacks." "With whom?" Kythera snarled. "These humans have turned half the galaxy against us. They've orchestrated the largest rebellion in Imperial history." As if summoned by her words, every screen in the Imperial Palace suddenly displayed Admiral Chen's face. The human woman looked directly at Kythera, as if she could see through the transmission link into the Zephyrian leader's soul. "Supreme Chancellor Kythera," Chen said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "I am speaking to you directly because I want there to be no misunderstanding about what happens next. Your empire murdered 7 million of my people to demonstrate your power. Now I'm going to demonstrate ours." Behind Chen, tactical displays showed the true scope of human operations. Zephyrian fleets were being systematically destroyed throughout the galaxy. Imperial colonies were falling to combined human and rebel forces. The mighty empire was being dismantled piece by piece with surgical precision. "You have one option remaining," Chen continued. "Unconditional surrender, dissolution of the empire, full accountability for all war crimes committed against humanity and other species. Accept these terms, and your species will be allowed to survive as equals rather than conquerors." Cathera's response was immediate and defiant. "Never. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We will not bow to upstart primitives." Chen's smile was cold as the void between stars. "Then you've chosen extinction over justice. I'm sorry it had to end this way." The transmission cut out, leaving the Imperial Palace in stunned silence. Outside the crystalline windows, the first human warships were appearing in Zephyr Prime's sky, their dark hulls blotting out the stars. The siege of Zephyr Prime lasted exactly 73 hours, not because of fierce resistance, but because Admiral Chen wanted every being in the galaxy to witness the Empire's final moments. Human fleets maintained perfect orbital positions, while the planet below descended into chaos, as millennia of imperial authority crumbled in real time. Supreme Chancellor Cathera stood in her palace's highest tower, watching human ships dominate her world's sky with casual ease. Her own defense fleets hadn't even attempted to engage. They'd surrendered the moment they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. The mighty Zephyrian military, which had terrorized the galaxy for ages, had collapsed without firing a shot. "Chancellor," her aide's voice trembled, "we're receiving surrender requests from our remaining fleets throughout the galaxy. Admiral Zektotha's first fleet has been completely destroyed. The outer territories have declared independence. Even our core worlds are joining the rebellion." Cathera's 6 eyes tracked the gentle movement of human vessels overhead. They weren't bombarding the surface or making demands. They were simply waiting, letting the weight of inevitable defeat crush whatever remained of Zephyrian pride. "How?" she whispered. "How did they plan this so perfectly?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Webb, the human academic who had served as cultural liaison to the imperial court for 20 years, stepped into the throne room. But now his humble demeanor was gone, replaced by the bearing of a military officer. "Because we studied you, Chancellor," he said quietly. "Every weakness, every assumption, every blind spot in your thinking. You believed that superior technology and overwhelming force were enough to maintain control forever." Cathera stared at the human she had considered a harmless scholar. You were military?" "Colonel Marcus Webb, Terran Intelligence Corps," he replied. "Like thousands of other humans throughout your empire. We weren't refugees seeking your protection, or merchants grateful for your trade routes. We were advanced scouts, gathering intelligence and positioning assets for the day you finally showed your true nature." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Every human in the empire, every supposedly grateful subject, had been part of humanity's preparation for war. The scale of the deception was beyond anything the Zephyrians had imagined possible. "We hoped it would never come to this," Webb continued. "For 50 years, we gave you chances to prove that coexistence was possible. Every treaty we signed was genuine. Every attempt at diplomacy was real. We wanted to believe that your species could learn to see others as equals rather than subjects." Through the palace's communication systems, Admiral Chen's voice began broadcasting one final message to the galaxy. "Citizens of all species," she began, "the Zephyrian Empire has fallen. Their fleets are destroyed, their colonies have surrendered, and their homeworld is under human protection. On countless worlds throughout the galaxy, beings who had lived under imperial rule for generations watched in amazement as Chen outlined humanity's plans for the post-Empire galaxy. There would be no human conquest, no replacement of Zephyrian tyranny with human domination. Instead, humanity was proposing something unprecedented, a galactic confederation based on equality and mutual respect. The species that suffered under Imperial rule will govern themselves, Chen announced. Humanity will provide security assistance and technological aid, but we will not rule over you. The age of empires is ending. The age of cooperation begins now. Kethera found her voice at last. What about us? What about the Zephyrian people? Webb's expression softened slightly. That depends on your choices from this moment forward. War criminals will face justice. The Imperial government will be dissolved, but your species will have the chance to join the new galactic community as equals, if you can learn to see other beings as something more than subjects to be controlled. And if we refuse, then you'll be left alone on your homeworld to contemplate the consequences of your choices, Webb replied. The galaxy will move forward without you. The final act of the war came not with explosions or grand battles, but with a simple ceremony broadcast across known space. On the surface of Zephyr Prime, in the ancient plaza that had witnessed 10,000 years of imperial pageantry, Admiral Chen accepted the formal surrender of the last Zephyrian officials. But the most powerful moment came afterward, when survivors from the murdered human colonies appeared via hologram to address their killers. Men and women who had lost everything spoke not of revenge, but of the future they wanted to build, a galaxy where such atrocities could never happen again. 7 million of our people died because you feared what we might become, said Dr. Sarah Martinez, whose entire family had perished in the New Geneva bombardment. But their deaths weren't in vain if they lead to a universe where all species can live in peace. As the ceremony concluded, humanity's hidden fury finally began to cool, replaced by the careful work of building something better. Across the galaxy, human fleets were already assisting former Imperial subjects in establishing their own governments. The weapons that had destroyed the Empire's military were being turned to construction projects and humanitarian aid. On Earth, in the Luna Base Command Center where it all began, Admiral Chen stood before the tactical displays one last time. The red markers showing human colonies had been replaced with green symbols representing free worlds choosing their own destinies. 7 million lives, she said quietly to her assembled staff. The price of teaching the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our military might. What was it then, Admiral? Asked Lieutenant Morrison. Chen smiled, and for the first time in days, there was warmth in the expression. Our ability to turn enemies into allies, to build bridges instead of walls, and to show others that there's a better way to live among the stars. Outside the Luna Base windows, Earth turned peacefully in space, its blue oceans reflecting the light of humanity's new dawn. The hidden fury had been released, the Empire had fallen, and now the real work could begin, building a galaxy where no species would ever again have to hide their strength to survive.